Hi there, Nikki here, and welcome to a video about Ansible password management. So in the videos that I've created to date, all the username and passwords for connecting to routers and switches have been stored in a host's inventory file in clear text. So in a production environment, you don't want to do that. It's not good security practice. So in this video, I want to discuss some of the options with Ansible. Firstly, I'm going to go through how we could encrypt those passwords with a built-in tool called Ansible Vault. Then I want to discuss how we can configure Ansible so we're just prompted for a password every time we run a playbook. So we'll integrate with TACACS. I don't have TACACS in the lab, but I'll be able to simulate it to just demonstrate how we can be prompted for a password without having to store that password in a file somewhere. And then finally, I will discuss the implementation of SSH keys, which will give us both security benefits through the use of public-private keys and as well as automation benefits. But firstly, I just want to review a host file from previous videos where I store the passwords, username and passwords in clear text in the file, and it's configured for each host in the lab. So what I've done in this video is I've removed that from the host file. So I only have the necessary information to connect to the devices, no longer have the username and passwords. What I've done is I've moved this to a dedicated YAML file in the group vars directory. So in group vars, if you have a subdirectory called all, that will tell Ansible to include all variables that you configure in that subdirectory. And then in the all directory, I just have a YAML file that I've created called creds.yaml. And in here I stored the credentials, just the Ansible username and password that was previously configured in the host file. So now I'm just declaring it in one location. I don't have to do it for every individual device, and this will be used for all of the devices. So if you have the same credentials to connect to every device, this is a way that you could do it. So of course that file is still in clear text. If we wanted to encrypt the file, we use the Ansible built-in encryption tool called Ansible Vault, and we just tell it we want to encrypt and give it the file name. So now we get asked for a password, so we give it an encryption password. And if we look at the file, now we can see that we can no longer see the details. It's encrypted with AES 256. So now that our credentials are encrypted in a YAML file, anytime we run a playbook, we have to tell the Ansible playbook command that we're using Ansible Vault and ask it to request a password from us. So what I've done is I've just created a simple playbook for demonstration purposes that will gather facts and display the host name and the iOS version. So if I want to use that with an encrypted credentials file, I just run the Ansible playbook command as normal with my inventory file, and then I add the command vault-id and also @prompt, which will instruct Ansible to request the Ansible password and then the excuse me the YAML file we want to run. So now we're asked for the vault password, so the one we just configured a few minutes ago, and our playbook should run. So what's happening here is that the credentials YAML file is encrypted, but when Ansible runs, because we've given it the password, it will decrypt that file and use the credentials to connect. So while it's running in memory, those credentials would be in clear text. So if you were to add a debug message with the Jinja format, double braces, Ansible underscore password, you would actually see in the output your password in clear text. I haven't been able to find anywhere where it actually stores it in a file. So I don't think it stores it in a file anywhere. So that's good. But when it's running, it would be in clear text. I noticed with the Napalm library, which is another open source library that you can integrate into Ansible, that it actually creates a temporary folder in your home directory under .ansible, and in there it creates a subdirectory temp and a file. And while the playbook's running, if you were to view that file, you would see your password in clear text in there. So watch out for that if you were running a playbook with Napalm across hundreds of hosts that take a number of minutes to run. In theory, somebody, if they had access to that machine, could actually view that file, and assuming that they have the access to the directory, they may need to have root access and verify your password. So that's one method. The second method then is if you had TACACS and you want, you can set up Ansible so that it just asks you for a password. So the default way that Ansible works is if you don't configure the Ansible _user anywhere in either your inventory or a variable file somewhere, it will by default take the username that you're using on your Ansible host. So in my instance, I've got a CentOS 8 machine, and my username here is DVN. So what I've done in the lab is on every device I've configured a DVN username. So you can see that I've configured username DVN, password May 2020. So if I go into, if I were to move the creds.yaml file out of group vars and just put it in this directory where my playbook is, now I don't have an Ansible user configured anywhere. In that creds file, it was Cisco anyway, but it's encrypted. I can decrypt it. Ansible Vault decrypt creds.yaml. Whoops. Spell it correctly. So it was configured with the Cisco username password anyway, but because I've moved it out of the all directory, it's not, Ansible is not aware of it anymore. So what that will mean, as I say, is it will force Ansible to use DVN, because that's my Linux username as the default username when connecting to a device. So if we then look at our ansible.cfg file, we will see that we have an option to ask for a password. So if you just search for ask, you will see that by default this option here, ask_pass, is hashed out, it's commented out, so it's not taking effect. So if we were to remove the comment, we're saying to Ansible now via the CFG file, ask me for my password. So if I run that same playbook again, this time I don't need to specify Vault IDs. I'm not using Ansible Vault, and I should just get prompted for a password. So I put in the DVN password and we run the playbook, and you can see on this router here, site 2 router 1, I'm logging every successful login. So it should pop up here now with a message saying that DVN has logged in. So it's going through the devices, and with any luck I'll get a message. So it's successfully connected to all the devices, and here we can see the login message, successful login user DVN. So I've obviously configured the JVM user in the local username database, but I've seen in production networks where you use TACACS and your AAA is configured to use TACACS. And with this method here, that if there's a network engineer that needs access to the network, the username that is created for them on the Linux machine is deliberately set to match exactly the username that they use for TACACS. And then when they run a playbook here, they are just prompted for their TACACS password, and that password then is not stored in a file anywhere. So that is the second method. And as I was saying, watch out if you're using Napalm. It does store it in a temporary file, but when the playbook is finished running, it actually wipes that file, so it doesn't lie around there. It's only during the playbook run. But Ansible itself doesn't appear to do that. I haven't been able to find anywhere that Ansible stores your password in clear text anywhere. So then the next method is SSH keys. So I'm just going to firstly reverse our ask pass change. So I'm not going to get asked for a password anymore. And what we need to do now is generate SSH keys on our Ansible host, the CentOS 8 machine in this instance. And then it will generate a private public key. So we will take the public key and install that on our routers and switches. So when we authenticate, the routers and switches will have our public key, and on the Ansible host we have the private key, and through that the router is able to tell that it's a successful authentication, because it'll be able to decrypt a message using the public key that was encrypted using the private key. So the command in Unix to generate these keys is the SSH keygen command. So by default, this command will generate the keys in OpenSSH format, which will work and allow you to directly SSH into your routers and switches without a password. However, the SSH library that Ansible used is called Paramiko, and Paramiko doesn't work with OpenSSH format. It requires PEM format. So when we use the SSH keygen, we need to tell it that we want to create RSA keys in the PEM format with just the -T -M option. So we run that. It asks us, do we want to store it in the default location, which is your home directory in the .ssh subfolder. So we say yes. Then it asks to enter a passphrase. So if you enter a password here, it encrypts your keys on this host, but every time you run a playbook, then you also need to use that password, which is fine, and it's more secure. But if you want to run playbooks, say in cron jobs, to run at 2 o'clock in the morning every night, then if you just leave this empty, then you'll be able to log into your devices without using a password. It'll just use the keys. So now we will have populated our home directory .ssh, and we have ID_RSA, which is our private key, and then the .pub, which is our public key. So if we just have a look at the public key, so ID_RSA, .ssh. We need to copy all of this information into our Cisco device. So if we go back to this router here, you can see that I already have it configured from a previous test that I was doing. So if I just remove what I've done previously and then reapply it. So the command is the IP SSH public key chain you tell it what username you want to use, which is davn, and you configure the key string. So you have an option of key string or key hash. In this instance, I'm going to configure the key string. So just watch out when you're pasting in the key string. It's limited to a certain number of characters, so you have to paste it in line by line. And I just remembered when I SSH in via the browser, I can't copy and paste. So let me get out of here, and we will do this via SSH from the CentOS box. So if I just SSH davn at 10.253.0.3, and it's May 2020. And if I just IP SSH pub key, user is davn, and we're going to configure the key string. So I usually just do the first 2 lines. If I put it all in at once, it doesn't work, and then the last 2 lines. And hopefully you'll get an error message there if it didn't paste in correctly, so it looks like it's okay. And now if I look at my config, you will see that I have a key hash, and I can actually use that key hash to configure all of the other devices. So I'll just copy that. You'll notice that when I configure the username, it is still configured with a password. If I just configured a username privilege 15, this would work and you would be able to SSH in without a password, but also you would have enabled someone to log in without SSH in the regular way without a password. So that's it's advised that you always configure a password, and I'm just using a very simple password in this case. So obviously if you configure a password, it would have to be a long secure password. So now that I configure that, I should be able to SSH in to this router, which is 10.253.0.3 without a password. So there we go. So that works, and again down here we can see that we've logged in with davn, this time using the SSH keys. So I've created a playbook that it logs in and it removes all the old keys. So I put this task in because if you want to change the string, it didn't work. It was giving me an error. So when I was testing this, I just remove it in case I've forgotten to remove it from one of the other routers or switches, and then I applied the keys. So I just need to add in the hash that I copied, and I'm applying the same public key of my CentOS host to all of my devices. And align it, so that should be okay. So if I just run this now, minus I, so it should. I've moved the creds.yaml file out of group vars all. I just remembered, so it might fail on the other ones. So it looks like it is going to fail. Yeah, it's failed. So what I need to do actually is move this back into group vars all. And then rerun this playbook, and it should run successfully this time. So hopefully it'll remove it from all devices. Yes, that's better. And deploy our public key to all devices. and now we've deployed SSH keys everywhere. So again, we can move the creds.yaml file. We don't need it anymore. So because it's in this directory and I'm not using include vars in my playbook, Ansible doesn't know about that file anymore. So at the moment it doesn't have Ansible_user or password set. If we connect to one of the other devices, we'll say site3 router 1, just verify the the config has been applied. So there's excuse me, there is the keychain applied, and what we can just do is log in on success log. That's what I was using on the other router, so I just configured it here as well. And when the playbook runs, we should see DVN username is logged in pop up here as well. So again, we're going to run the devos YAML file, which runs against all hosts. So let's do that. Devos, and we should then see we should successfully run and see DVN pop up here as we do. So there's the login success with the SSH key, and then we will get our host name and iOS version on all our devices. And there we go. So that concludes that video. I hope that's a help to describe some methods to manage passwords on your devices when you're using Ansible. Thank you very much.